The Reggae Star Factor family and Media welcomes you to the Groove Score. This is a live stream at Reggae Star Factor YouTube and Reggae Star Factor Facebook. The date, the 14th of May 2021. The time, 8 p.m. until 11 p.m. Featuring the legendary Little Roy. With songs like Bondo Naya. Also songs like Reggae Soul.
People, I've got the reggae soul. People, you will want some more.
Also featuring the legendary Earl 16 with songs like Love Is a Feeling.
I need a love I can be.
And Holding Back the Years.
Holding back the years, holding back the tears I've had so long.
Also featuring the legendary Nearest Joseph with songs like Guidance.
In every day, trust in the Father, He'll guide you on your way. Guidance in every way, teach my people not to go astray.
And also featuring the Queen of the Pack, the Queen Max with songs like Children of the Most High.
Don't fear no man, nor fear no beast. We only wanna live in
And also featuring the King with songs like Higher Meditation.
Higher meditation, divine man so much inspiration.
This is definitely one not to be missed. Make it a date and don't delay.
Good evening and welcome everybody to the last episode of the Struggle to Success. It's a shame that it's the last, but I'm sure that we'll be able to do much more after this. I'm very excited about tonight's show. This show has been brought to you by Legacy Foundation, Legacy Gala, Lottery Fund, and Pen Pansy, also Eat of Eden. So we thank our sponsors and our supporters and our custodians for making this show happen. This show, it was designed with us, our community in mind, our mental health, self-care, wealth care, and healthcare. We understand the changing times has put us in a position where we have to take more care of ourselves, spiritually, physically, and mentally. So we've designed this show as an intervention to prevent mental ill health, to promote good mental health, and also to ensure that we take some learning, inspiration, information, education on coping with mental health challenges. In our community, it's very important for the young men, the young women, our parents, that we look after ourselves and we make sure that we look after each other. The last 6 weeks, it's been very informative. We've had a lot of guests from our community come and share professionally about their stories, the glory, the ups and the down, the good and the bad and the ugly. And they've been open, they've been inspirational. And it's been a learning for me personally to sit back and just take in the information and be impacted by the inspirational stories. Tonight, it's kind of like a finale. It's bringing all of the episodes together. We talked about in previous episodes relationships. We talked about creating wealth. We talked about self-care, healthcare, our health. We talked about parenting. Today we're going to talk about marriage. Why marriage? I'm personally not married, never been married. I've always had an aspiration to experience marriage because it was modeled to me by my mother and father, who will be celebrating their 50th year of marriage come next year. My mother, who recently had COVID and a stroke, lung and kidney failure, she's been in hospital for the last 14 weeks, came out yesterday, miraculously. And I've seen how my marriage has kind of served her with her children, served her with her husband. I've seen my dad, who was stuck in Jamaica for 6 months, return on Friday, and how marriage has served him in that they have each other, they have children, they have love, they have silver and gold they haven't got, but they have a real rich connection, not just in the good but in the bad, not just in rich but in poor. They say the vows of richer and poorer, sickness and health, the good and the bad. What else was it? What other vows they got? They got
till death us do part.
Till death us do part, and the love, honor, and obey.
Yeah.
But a lot of people want to get rid of that obey part. So that obey part don't really sit well. You know what I'm saying? But why marriage? I believe that marriage is very important. If we look at the original intention of marriage from a biblical perspective, we have to then bring in God's thoughts and idea around that marriage. And it was it wasn't good for man to be alone. It was good, very good, that man had a helpmate, and they were instructed and commanded to go forward, multiply, replenish, and they had a purpose. There was a purpose behind marriage. And even if we look at ancient times, tribes would have arranged marriages. You'd have a warring tribe, you'd have a farming tribe. Those chiefs of the heads of those tribes would come together and cut blood covenant, and say, well, the farming tribe would need protection and the warring tribe would need provision. So they build a relationship, an alliance based on strengths and weaknesses, and then to consummate or to bring that union together, the chief would say, well, by the way, I've got a son that will be suitable for your daughter. And there's that, when they say the saying blood is thicker than water, it's because that blood covenant was thicker than the water that comes from a woman's womb. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So not only would they cut covenant in terms of that alliance, but they would unify their children. You know what I'm saying to you? So it was more about enlarging your territory and wealth creation. And I look at that as purpose. If I believe as a man, if you lose sight of your purpose, then there's a consequence. You know what I'm saying? You don't need no help. You know what I'm saying? And so if you're meeting up with a woman or women without a purpose, it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem, and that problem kind of spills out with having children. Mm-hmm. It spills out in the community, because it comes out of the home. Because remember, it spills out in society, and then other communities start to look down at you, like to say, well, you don't have any value, you don't have any beliefs, you don't have any principles, because you don't come from a good family. And the nucleus, the heartbeat of the family, is the marriage. It's from that family and from that marriage, that modeling, that we're supposed to get our values, our beliefs, our principles, that we can go out there and make something of us, of our families. You know what I'm saying? But the struggle is, for me personally, I've never experienced that. So I would like to, by God's grace, if that was something that's in line with God's will for me to experience. So that's why I felt like I needed to bring on some experts in marriage. Experts in marriage. So I just want to thank our guests Basil, who normally hosts with us, it's his birthday today. So I want to wish Basil Links Palmer from Pempanzi and Eat of Eden a happy birthday. God bless you, because he does make the time, and he does invest in people's health and well-being. It's been something that has been his mission, and he goes about doing that, diligently. So thank you, Basil, and happy birthday once again.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, Kim Thompson normally is with us as a co-host, and Deborah. They had some prior arrangements, so hopefully they'll join with us later. And Ewan Briscoe, we've got our resident councillor Scotty Scott with us, so he will be joining us in a bit. So we're just going to dive in it really, and I'm going to introduce, first of all, we have Miss Paulette Cato Tyson. I've got that right.
Yeah, just Mrs. Yeah,
Mrs. Mrs. I forgot about the Mrs. And we have Lee Lawrence beside her. And also we have our distinguished guest, special guest, Pastor Peter Nimbard. And I just want to say that before I introduce, before you come in and start talking, Paulette's like a sister to me. Like, her mum and dad were like my mum and dad. Growing up, coming from Jamaica, living in North London, when I wasn't getting on with my mum and dad, I always knew that I could get some food at Mommy Cato and Daddy Cato's house. And Mommy and Daddy Cato had not a lot of kids. They had about 11 kids. But they would wind up their kids by making sure I eat dinner first. You know what I'm saying?
So true.
They would come in there and, why is Marlo here eating off our food? So, because I got baptized first. That's it. Because I got baptized, so that's why I get the food. You understand? Kind of too rebellious. You understand? So Mommy Kate, they used to be such a marriage. When I saw how they modeled marriage, they used to play with each other. They used to flirt with each other. They used to cook together. I'd go around the house and Daddy Cato's cutting the meat fine with a razor, and then Mommy Cato would season it up, and then they would pray together, and then they would crack joke together, and they were a proper one unit. They were a unit, So I was privileged to see special moments with Mommy Cato and Daddy Cato. And I wish that for myself. It never happened, but I did wish that for myself, It was, being on the outside looking in, I wasn't their child, but I was able to see, family. I'm saying, and even though I came from my mom and dad together, I had issues with my dad, so I wasn't able to experience that richness at an early age with my dad that I was able to see with Mommy and Daddy Cato. Thank God, the successes that me and my dad are like brothers now, and so thank you, Paul, for accepting to come at such a short notice.
No problem.
And we look forward to hearing your journey. Lee is a very special young man to me. I remember when he was about 26, 27, and he had a nightclub. And we used to go to his nightclub. His nightclub was one of the top nightclubs in London. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get the best champagne and the best ladies.
Oh my God.
At Lee, Brandy Lee, they used to call it. Because, I don't even know his new Lee Lawrence name. I know Brandy Lee. I thought Brandy was his first name. Lee was his second name, That's what I thought. But he turned around and told me, boy, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30, And when he said that to me, I said, this young man feisty, man. Feisty. Thought he was going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. So, so said, so done. I'm sure the bank account's sweet now.
I'm still working.
I like that. A very special man, and very much an inspiration. He went on to many exploits since then. I went into nightclubbing soon after that, 15 years in. But one of the things that stuck out to me about Lee and his humility, even though he was this big, club owner and, very well known on, the music industry, the music scene, I said to him one day, no, I got these young girls that I work with from the youth offending team in Southwark. And this was about 15, 20 years ago. And we used to have, there was about 30 of them. We'd have a 12-week program. And 3 hours a week, we'd sit down and talk about things like what we're talking about. You know, these young girls were getting into gangs. A lot of them were getting exploited. And they just needed that personal development. So we had a program and they were part of the program. So I said to Lee, can you come and speak to these girls about your story, about how the police shot your mum? He came. He said he'd never done nothing like this before. He came and we had a format where we'd create a circle and we'd have a chair in the middle. We'd call that the truth chair. So whoever sat in the chair would have to speak their truth, something that they've never disclosed before. And he sat in the chair and he started talking. And with tears in his eyes, every young girl in that group, that meeting, started crying. And he's just gone on from public speaker to public speaker to public speaker. So, you know, thank you, Lee, for your humility and your growth. You know what I'm saying? Now you're a worldwide motivational speaker. So we're just humbled to have you here.
No pressure. And thank you for, well, I suppose seeing something in me at that time that probably I didn't even see in myself yet. You know, sometimes you're kind of working towards something, and you know, there's people who can sense and see and pick up their energy.
Yeah, definitely.
So I appreciate it.
Because I used to go to a lot of his dances and see him on the mic toasting. So I know it's natural. You know what I mean? Forget the brandy out of it. Sorry, Lee. It's a family beat, you know. And then, last but not least, Pastor Nimbard. You know, I remember, because you know, for a lot of people don't know that I had a little season in church. You know what I'm saying? I come out of, you know, the Queen's Majesty's Hotel, and I was in church, and in that time there was a lot of men in church, so that was the attractive thing for me. These guys had stories of, they came from similar backgrounds to me. They came out of church, of the prison, and you know what I'm saying, they were in church, and now they're praising God, they're getting married, and I said to myself, there must be something in this church thing. I went to a convention in Greenwich, I'll never forget, and in the conventions, it was all the churches that would come together like once a year. All the churches, so we would look forward to convention, because you know, so you're gonna see your young sisters then there, and everybody gonna dress up in a 3-piece suit, and everybody's gonna look nice. I'll never forget, there was a man in a white linen suit with a Panama hat. Looked like a movie. He was just walking down the stairs. I said, "Who this Denzel Washington?" I said, this man come to me, brother man, how you doing, brother man? I said, this look like Malcolm X mix up with Martin Luther King. You know what I'm saying? And the man's suit, he just looked like a black Jesus. You know what I'm trying to say to you? The white linen with the Panama hat. I said, that's who I need to be like. I'm saying, but I never had the money to buy the linen suit. I never had the hat. But you know what I mean? He's responsible for the attire that man listening right now. You know, this man here was my mentor. You know, so Pastor P's story is gonna come later. So we're gonna kick it off and just jump right in, Paul. Why marriage? Why did you marry? What was the struggles for marriage? What was the successes in marriage? Do you advise young people to get married? Is it still worthwhile getting married now? Should we just forget marriage and just shack up?
That shack up thing. I did it for 11 years, shacking up with he was my boyfriend. So yeah, I shacked for 11 years. And how I met my husband, it's funny, I went to a party, and when I got to the party, someone said to me, my friend said to me, that she'd been told to tell me that there was going to be some new guys coming and I wasn't allowed to talk to them.
Rude.
But what they forgot to do was tell me who the new guys were, right? because everybody in the room was new to me, because it wasn't my friend's party, it was my friend's friend's party. So, but the room was really busy and full, and we decided to go downstairs into the bedroom, and we started playing charades and things like that. And it was just fun playing charades. And all of a sudden, this guy walked in with a plate of food in his hand, and our eyes just locked. And he didn't look me up and down. All he did was look at me, and I looked at him, because I was never afraid to look at anybody. And I looked him straight in the eyes, and I said to my sister, I'm having that guy. And and I thought, how am I going to go around to talk to him? So I picked up an aerosol can, and I went around the room interviewing people.
Very creative.
Very creative, right?
Yeah.
And people were just having laughs and jokes and everything. I went over to him and I said, so what is the measurement of your inside leg? And he said, what's the measurement of your bust? And I went, this is the guy. Yes.
No sounds or proverbs.
No sounds, no proverbs. I wasn't a Christian. And that night we spoke all night and danced and spoke and danced and spoke. And at the end of the evening, he asked me for my number. And I said to him, I can't give you my number, because I knew this guy was special. And I knew if I gave him my number while I was still dating someone, that he would never trust me. Now, I had to say to myself, I don't know if I'm ever going to meet this guy again, because I'd never seen him before. He didn't come from my ends. And I just had to say to him, I can't give you my number, because like I said to you before, I'm dating someone. And so we went our separate ways. And it must have been maybe a month later. And by this time, me and my boyfriend had broken up, and through his own fault. And but then he phoned me up and said, I would like to take me out. Let's talk about this. Let's see if we can get back together. This was my ex telling me this. And I thought, okay, but all I'm going to do is show him all of this. You're not getting any of this, but I'm going to go out with you and you can get me dinner. And at the end of the night, I'm going to say, ta-ta. So I went round my friend's house, and I had on this knockout dress, and she's doing my hair, and a phone call happened, and the phone call said, guess who's coming to my house for dinner? And they said, Jason's coming. And I was like, hold on a minute, I'm coming to your house. I phoned up my ex and said, not coming, and went to meet my potential boyfriend. And we spoke and everything, and we exchanged phone numbers, and then we became friends on the phone. Mainly we had phone conversations for ages and ages, and then we started dating. And this guy, I was thinking to myself, he's lovely to look at, he's lovely, he's got loads of words of wisdom and everything, and we got on with each other, but we didn't get on with each other because he was so different to me. He was so militant, so black power, and I wasn't that. I was a black woman just getting on with it. But he had all this militant talk and everything. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like this. But somehow he was just a beautiful person. And then he wasn't. And I struggled with him. I struggled with all his black power. And I struggled with the things that he was saying, like because I was always the girl that wore the short skirt. I had great legs. So I had them displayed and I'll be going to work. And he was saying, do you think you should really go to work like that? Do you think that's really appropriate? Well, what do you think the message that you're giving? I'm thinking, what flipping message are you talking about, mate? Right? This ain't giving no message. I like showing my legs off. But to him, I think he's obviously looking at it from a man's point of view. But if you don't understand what the man's point of view is, as a woman, you're gonna either lose out on someone that you should be with. And so, did I change the way I dressed? Go and ask me the question.
Did you change the way you dressed?
No. So it was a struggle. It was a struggle. And he could see that this is who I liked, but I'm trying to change her. And I'm saying to him, you don't know who this woman is, right? And I don't back down. I don't back down. And he is very strong, a strong man. He when I tell you, papal, you know, all the muscles, and he's tall and he's big, but never intimidating. And so we would have arguments. And it was so funny because he told my mum that I bam a lot. Bamming, argue. So I bam and bam, right? And it became a joke in the family that I'm a bammer, right? And I bam and bam. And he's a really quiet guy. So I don't even know why he was interested in someone so loud as me, because I'm loud. I was a party goer. When party is dry, when I reach, party is rich. Do you know what I'm saying? Yes. And I would be the type of person that when I'm dancing to the end. And he's the kind of person who's going to stand there and just do this. And if the music's sweet him a little bit, go like this.
That's the bad man.
The bad man. And he was the type of person that would hold up the wall. And I'm in the middle of the floor. Do you see what I mean? And then when I went to my slow dance, I'll go find him. Because he's holding up the wall, isn't it? Right? But he would always have his back to the wall because he was in security. So he was always looking and aware and everything. I'm like, I'm so easygoing, you know, maybe not so aware of what's going on, but aware. But he, over the years, if you think of a union where people are so different. So I'm like really happy-go-lucky, and he was really serious. And you think, how would this work? But if you met my husband now, he's taken on so many of my attributes. He's got more jokes than me. He calls it, you know, anytime he sees, because my sister and I, we do shopping together, and she comes to the door and he comes to the door and he gets the bags and everything. And they're always having jokes, and he'll say, oh, you're my favorite sister-in-law beginning with M. She's the only one beginning with M. And he's always got something to say, and he'll phone up like a subject will come up and he'll say, do you know what? I need to phone blah, blah to talk to them about this. Someone in my family. My mum used to phone him almost every Saturday morning when we were shacking up, right? Every Saturday morning to talk to him. Just talking to him, getting to know who he was. And, you know, we were together, an unmarried couple, for 11 years. And that used to burn me because I saw people getting married. And I would say to him, what's happening? And, you know, I was thinking to myself, aren't I good enough to marry? I'm good enough to have your son. but aren't I good enough to marry? And he would be like, you don't need to, all the marriage and everything. And then I got saved. Then I got baptized. And I said to him, it's either we marry or we're done. We're finished. Now that, I don't know if I really was going to do that. And that is the truth. I don't know if I really was going to do that. Because when I tell you this man is special, when I tell you he took time off work, a good month, to look after his son when he was born, to look after me. There was nothing wrong with me. But we would take it in turns to do the night shift of looking after my son, feeding him, changing him. I taught him how to do all those things. And he just went with it. And he said, you sleep, P. I'll look after him. Now, this man is special. And I know that him being with me kind of watered down some of his militant side. But also, it helped me to understand my militant side. Do you understand? Yeah. So I then, now as a Christian woman, and he said, we are getting married. If that is what it takes, we are getting married. But even on the day that we were getting married, the night before, we went out, was in Tobago, and he said to me, if you don't want to do this, just say. And I said to him, what? He said, I don't want to go into a marriage where there is doubt, because I'm doing it once and once only. And it brought me back to the time when we first started dating, and I said to him, there's never going to be 3 in this marriage. I'm not going to bring another person in this marriage. No, into this relationship as a boyfriend and girlfriend. I said, there's not going to be 3. And so if you even thinking about looking at somebody else, just tell me and go about your business, because I'm not fighting no woman for no man. I've got no tree in my face, and I can find somebody because I've got a great personality and I know that I'm a benefit for somebody. So if you are thinking of even looking at someone else, then go about your business. And he said to me, I don't want 3 in our relationship. It's just meant to be us 2. And I don't, if that is how, if you are going to look at somebody else, then he will go as well. And that was our bond. That was our covenant. That was the covenant, because I don't look at anyone else to desire them. I don't desire anyone else but my husband. I look at him and I see the beauty of how he has helped to grow my children, our children. And the way how he speaks to my son, and the way how he oh my gosh, he takes my son and kisses him and hugs him. My son is almost 24 now. And the way that they interact with each other, and there's all that, that manly stuff and everything else, but the way how he shows that loving side. You said, is love got to be in the marriage? What's love got to do with it? Do you know, this week it's funny because we're going through a little rough time, but nothing that cannot be worked between. Because the reason why, because we talk to each other and we really understand each other. And while I was in bed, God showed me this. He showed me this scripture, And I said to him, my husband isn't a Christian. I said to him, oh, no connection. Hold on. Sorry. I said to him, I'm going to read this to you because God has given me this to read. And usually when I do that, he listens. He doesn't say, oh, I don't want to hear any of this. He actually wants to listen. He hears. We pray together, despite the fact that he isn't a Christian, but we pray together. But it's usually when I say, do you know what, we need to pray about something. And so God gave me this scripture. And it says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. And there's so much more to this scripture because it talks about when I was a child, I spoke like a child. And now that I am a man, I speak like a man. And it ends it by saying, so now faith, hope, and love abide. These three, but the greatest of these is love. The greatest of these is love. And this is read out in so many weddings. But do people really understand what this really means? To be in a relationship, to be patient, to be kind. I've had to learn to be kind to my husband. He's the one is kinder than me. Kinder than me. He's the one, if we have an argument, he's the one that will say sorry. Even when it's not his fault, he says sorry. Because he knows that this is how our relationship works. And so now I know how to say sorry. Because I'm coming from a place where I thought I was perfect. That there was nothing, absolutely nothing that I did wrong. So when my husband started pointing out things that was wrong about the way how I conducted myself, I thought, this man's mad. What was he talking about? Can't you see I'm perfect? And I would say to him, you're blessed to have me, you know. But you know what he says to me now? You're blessed to have me, you know, Paulette. And I say, I know. Mm-hmm. Because we've learned things from each other along the way. It's not a perfect marriage. But we continually try and we continually working together to make it work because we don't want to part. We don't want to be another statistic. We don't want to separate or our children to experience that. Because marriage is so important to stay together. And for our children, for ourselves, for our mental health. To stay together. For our children's mental health. You know, my parents, you met my parents. you met my parents. And everything wasn't perfect. But they stayed together.
I remember Daddy Cato would say that women don't have no sense.
Says after 6 o'clock.
After 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know, if EastEnders and Coronation Street had on, then not no sense.
That's what he used to say. And the reason why my dad used to say that,
why?
I tell you why. Because when my dad was in Jamaica, women used to run after my dad like they were thirsty.
Okay.
Right? Run after my dad like they were thirsty. And how many of them had children with my dad? And when he met my mum, he was still playing around. And my mum said to him, it's either England or I'm gone. You either stop your rubbish or I'm gone. And they left and came to England. And you have to think about, what legacy are you leaving behind? What are you leaving behind for your children? My dad had 11 children with my mum. And with the 11 children, my dad used to make sure he paid all his bills first. Because he never wanted a bailiff at his door. He never wanted anything taken from me. And he didn't like to be in debt. And if he borrowed money off anybody, he wrote it down and got them to sign it and him to sign it. And the date it was going to be repaid. And he would repay it by that date. And I know, and I remember that. That is why the first thing when my wages come out, apart from offering and tithing and things like that, bills. And then I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about it. And my husband, he doesn't have to think about it.
You had a good model in your dad.
Yeah.
Example.
Yeah.
So you knew when you met your husband that he was the one.
I knew he was the one. Because he never looked me up and down. That's one of the first men that has ever done that.
Scotty, do you want to put Scotty on there, please? I think Scotty needs to come in now, bro. Can you hear me, Scotty?
I can hear you, but I'm just thinking about all your other guests in the room, and I'm you know, I got my therapist hat on, and something that we always try and do is have our counseling hour, which is 50 minutes. So whenever I'm doing any piece of work, I'm subconsciously watching the time and thinking about how do we bring other people in. And I'm aware that you've got some really special people in your room today. And I really want to try and hear a little bit of their story, just so that we can get some balance in terms of, I mean, our Miss explained her story and how she met and that true love that developed. That was a really powerful testament of how soulmates, when they connect. But I think it's really important to hear from the other people in there around what was their story, how marriage might have worked or not have worked, or the importance of marriage, and just to kind of put some context in it, in what Miss was saying about the struggle. Marriage is a struggle. Marriage is a piece of work that is, it needs daily work. It needs daily nurturing. It's almost like, it's like a garden, and for a garden to grow, you've got to believe in tomorrow. So for marriage to work, it's almost like a garden. You don't just plant things and then just, you know, look out the window and hope that things is gonna bloom. You have to go out there. If cat come in the yard, you have to put little stones down where the cat might go. If weed is coming up, you have to pick them. So like that communication aspect that she spoke about is really important. So yeah, I'm just, you know, I'm doing my counseling hour, and I'm aware of the guests that you have, and I really want to make sure that the audience that's tuning in, that's been with us for the 6 weeks, get a chance to hear some of their input. So I'm going to bring it back to you, Mylon. I really want to hear the other two guys talk and hear like some interaction and see how they, you know, they dance with this subject. So yeah, I want to put it back into you guys.
Yes, it's love. I always say what love's got to do with. My dad always says like this: love is a contract between two damn fools. So I did not realize that love plays a major role in marriage. I thought it was more about purpose. So it was beautiful to hear, you know, from a woman's perspective, and how you talk about your husband like he's a king, like he's a, you know, very, very humbling. You know, I wish I could get some of that myself, but
You can.
we're gonna come back to you, Paul. We're gonna definitely come back to you. We're gonna move on to Mr. Lee Lawrence. I want you just to just dive into this marriage and this love and this beautiful how you met your wife and, you know, dancing all night.
So it was interesting hearing your story and inspiring as well, and that saying about opposites attract as well. And I think, as well as the fact that opposites attract, there's a lot to deal with within that too, with the opposites, and it's about getting to that middle ground where you, as you said, rightfully said, he took in a little bit of your, you know, personality and attitude and how you saw things, and you done the same. And I think for me, I feel that's where the magic kind of happened. That was the sweet spot, really, for your relationship. So for me, I think I have to kind of go back and just talk about my backstory and how that then brought me to where I am today. So, as Milo said, when I was 11, my mum was shot by the police, and I was witness to that. So the trauma of seeing something like that had a huge impact on me. So there was no therapy around that, and I was just made to kind of get on with it. 2 weeks later, I'm back in school. And I had the responsibility of caring for my mum from a very young age. So I was very, I would say, mature for my age, knew about responsibility, knew about how to look after someone and to protect someone and care and be patient. I had all those soft skills because I had to for the role that I was playing. And for me, I took my role very, very seriously in terms of looking after my mum. What was the negative side to that was that emotionally, I wasn't as developed, right? And so therefore, when I'm getting into relationships, I have an unrealistic expectation in those relationships, because now that nurturing that I didn't get as a child, I'm almost seeking that in my relationships, which then is, as I said, is an unrealistic expectation and causes a problem in those relationships. Also, I've got a mother who's gone through this terrible trauma, terrible incident where she's been shot and now paralyzed, and I've seen her battle through that. So in some senses as well, my definition of a woman is defined by my mum. It's very hard for any woman to live up to that standard. So there lies some of the issues. Also, my father was very absent. You know, he used to come around on the weekends, and then after my mum was shot, you know, that dwindled down, and sometimes we wouldn't see him maybe even for, you know, from 1 year to another. So I grew up in a household where there's no father figure, no male role model, and then now you're the second to last child, but you are becoming almost like the man of your house. So I said to myself, I saw what my mum went through, and I said to myself, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't abandon nobody like that. And I almost was driven to want to be different to my dad, different to my brother, who was another person who I felt wasn't a good role model. So I was determined in my head that I would like to make that commitment one day. So fast forward, I met my wife, and it was, you know, we were dating for about a year or so, and she about 2 years, and it was I was turning 30, and she organized a surprise birthday for me. And when I bust the door, surprise, the only person I could see was my mum. right? And this was the first time that my mum had been out without me taking her somewhere. So it was an emotional moment, and I felt like she understood what was important to me. Yeah. So I said, okay, if I'm with this woman in 6 months' time, I'm going to propose to her. You know, based upon that, obviously how I felt about her too, but because she didn't act, that showed me that you understand what's important to me. I thought, okay, you're the woman. And so said, so done, proposed. We got married, and I've been married for 14 years. This year would make it 15 years. However, disclaimer, we are going through a separation, right? So I'm just going to be honest about that. And one of the things for me that I've experienced in terms of the whole marriage thing is that sometimes you are signing up to something that you don't necessarily quite understand. And I had no reference point. It's not like when I was going through issues, I could go to other married couples and say X, Y, Z. I couldn't go to no elders. You know, I was almost like the first in my family to get married. And then you find when there is problems, people side rather than people coming and trying to really be proper mediators. People side and they take sides and all the rest of it. And then we're living in this kind of disposable society where I don't need you. I don't need you. I can get someone else. I can get someone else. And, you know, the ego and all these things come into play. And I think the vows that we sign up to as well within the church, I think if you're not adhering to, you know, Christianity as a whole, and you're signing up to these vows, it can be very hard to maintain those vows. And we may gravitate to different parts of those vows. So for me, you know, that for richer, for poorer, to death do us part, that might mean something to me. And I could say, okay, to some degree, my life reflects that, where I am adamant, I will never leave you. I will never desert you. Yeah, if you was ill, I would be there 100%. But there might be some of those other parts of those vows that I'm not as strong in. Yeah. Right. And where the person that you're with may, you know, that might be the end all and be all for them. So I think with all of that and everything that I've gone through, you know, my view is this: marriage is still important, or the union is important, however you decide to do it. I don't think at any cost, because if you do have children and the relationship becomes toxic, sometimes those children are better off. Yes. Yeah, when you are apart and you co-parent, right? So I think every situation has to be measured on its own merit. But I do believe that you need to sign up to a set of principles, like what you both did. You know, that's very simple about it will not be free. It will just, and if that ever changes, we'll have that conversation. Yeah. I think you have to sign up to a set of principles that you both agree to and you both commit to, and that forms the foundation of your relationship. And if anything happens, you go back to that. This is what we both agree. Yeah. But I'll be honest with you, I've never looked at my vows ever since from the time I got married. I'm just going to be honest. I haven't. We haven't gone back to it and said, okay, what did we actually sign up to? And that maybe because I didn't connect to those vows in the way that they've been written. So, you know, my wisdom now would be I'd have to adopt some set of values and principles that, you know, mean something to me, and I'm confident that I can commit to as well. And that and the same to the person that I'm with, that, you know, it's something that we both agreed we're going to meet each other here, right? This is what we're signing up to, and, you know, let's go forth and make it happen. So, I mean, that's all I've really got to say. You know, that's my experience. You know, I haven't gone into any personal details because it's a very sensitive subject and issue. But, you know, I've made my mistakes within that. And I think it's important to take accountability of self first. I think it's you know, I think it's important that you hold yourself accountable first before you ask someone else to hold themselves accountable to you. So, that's another thing that I've learned as well throughout my marriage and my process is, you know, it starts with you, and you shouldn't expect more from someone else than what you're prepared to give yourself.
Yeah.
I think that success is measured, is subjective. It's measured based on what you had to go through and where you had to come from to get to where you are. So you can't compare and contrast. I can't compare my success with yours because I didn't come from the same place you did. But from an outside looking in, from where we come from, the environment we come from, for a man to even consider marriage, from my perspective, that was very successful. You know what I'm saying? To even try to, because you had a choice. You got, a man said women have access of the control to sex, but men have the access and the control to marriage. Yeah. You chose that, and for me, that's successful. What the lessons learned out of that is what I feel everybody can take from. You see what I'm trying to say to you? Because we're talking about mental health. How was your mental health helped or hindered through that process of marriage?
So I'll just go back to that point when I made that decision. I made a decision to get married at, you could almost say, the peak of my life, right? I was, that guy, I was doing all right. Running a nightclub, there was men looking at me thinking, Lee, are you for real? Like, if I was in your position, I'd never be settling right now. But, there was a strong sense of, I didn't want that kind of self-destruction, right? And I felt like if I carried on kind of living that kind of life that I was at that time, that's where I was headed. And I wanted to challenge myself too, because it was easy to not do that, right? To not commit.
Yeah.
And I felt that maybe if I really commit myself into to one person, into one space, then the dividends will, that you get back will kind of outweigh all of this kind of fast life that you've been living in, quick excitement and so on and so forth. But again, I think I went into it with that kind of unrealistic expectation. Marriage and settling down and having a family done a lot for me, gave me a sense of purpose, not as a son to a mum, now as a father to my children and to my wife. And so therefore you fight a little bit harder for the things that you want to achieve, and you understand that whatever you're doing is not just for self. Yeah, it's for all of us. So it helped me to be focused. The other thing is, I was, I used to live a life that wasn't honest, the way I used to earn money, without going into the details, and me settling in my relationship and marriage helped me to transform, right? And I legitimized myself, because I felt like I was putting my family at risk.
Yeah.
So family, that whole union really, I would say, had a huge benefit in that transformation. I would say that, right? The other side of it is that because I didn't have an idea of what it should be, when you are coming up against problems and challenges, that messed with your psyche as well, to some degree, because you're just like, okay, I didn't know this was going to happen. I'm not sure how to deal with this.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily have all the tools at my disposal at that time to deal with it in the most appropriate way. And those are the things that I would say, I made my mistakes and have to obviously learn and continue to learn from. But yeah, I think right now I'm still have no regrets about it. I still feel that I'm a better man going through that process. And I feel like, I haven't given up on that idea either. I think it is important. And I've seen the benefits, in terms of my children as well.
Yeah.
And how they thrived being in that kind of secure, then let's say, environment. So, yeah.
How do you think that other ethnicities view us as a black community when it relates to marriage? Because we used to be, promote marriage. We used to promote family values. Beliefs were strong in terms of our unity. It takes a village, that type thing. Not so much now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much now. We're more likely to get married and then be separated, or divorce. How do you think other ethnicities view us in terms of society and our values and our, where we stand in relation to marriage?
Well, there's definitely a perception of the black man, a stereotype of, having children, not hanging around, not being responsible, X, Y, X, Y, X, Y. And I feel that narrative has been told for a purpose to destroy us, to turn us against each other. So I think there is some element of truth to that. But, my two best friends that I grew up with in school, they come from a family where mum and dad was there. I was the only one out of us that didn't have that. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So it wasn't the reality for all. Yeah. And I think the more we perpetuated that image, the more damage it caused within our communities. Yeah. And I think also when you say measuring success, you got to understand what we're up against as well. So if black men are being incarcerated, if black men are being demasculated because you're not earning enough money, and when you're not earning enough money, because that's another thing, most divorces happen because of money.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're not bringing in that money, we say for rich or for poor, you're not doing your thing, it's a problem. Right. So all of these things will have an impact on how you're seen. As we mentioned, you spoke about your husband like he's a king, and I think it's important to feel like that. Now, if you're talking down to him all the time, he ain't feeling that no king in his house anymore, right? And then that has an impact on his mental health, his well-being, his self-value, and all of these things, and it's a ripple effect. And then they seek that somewhere else because they want to feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some horrific stories where, some men have to sleep outside, can't come back inside the house because they're not paying for the house. So as far as the woman's concerned, you have to sleep outside. And I've heard stories where women are getting abused and all kinds of stuff. So with all of that's happening, why would you still promote marriage?
Because you're stronger together than apart, right? I say no man's an island. A lot of my successes, if we want to look at it like that, I've had support in those successes. People might just see me here today, but there's a lot of people involved in my journey for me to be where I am today. So I think it's important from that perspective. I believe in team. I believe in partnership. Another thing I got told once through a marriage counselor like that, the quickest way to bankruptcy is divorce. Yeah. So it affects us economically as well. Yeah. Because now everything's split. You got to pay for your house where you live with your bills and this, that, and the other. I've got to pay for my bills and I've got to buy my own food. You've got to buy your own food. So, and if children are involved, then it's expected that the man has got to then give money to the woman who is looking after whoever is looking after the children. And it's usually the women that end up looking after the children. So it's coming apart from the fact that you're having to pay all your bills by yourself
and then you're expected to pay for. I mean, you would be doing it anyway if they were living with you, but it's just now everything is apart.
Yeah, and it's double.
Yeah.
So that what should have been staying into
Yeah.
the family now is going out.
Yeah.
Right. So there's many positives, to a kind of real healthy relationship, marriage, union, however you want to call it. There's many positives to it. It's just if it becomes non-productive, if it's having the kind of opposite effect than the desired one, then I feel at that point you have to assess and weigh up and say, okay, are we better off apart or being together? And sometimes, unfortunately, you may be better off apart, due to your individual circumstances. So I'm going to sit here and say I believe that no matter what, you should, because some people can't weather that. Some people haven't got the endurance to be able to say whatever it is, I'm gonna be able to deal with it. And you have to appreciate that everyone's different,
100%.
So that's how I see it, really. I don't think it's no one size fits all, but from a self point of view, you have to be honest with yourself in terms of, just last thing I'll just finish with. When I got married, my wife's stepdad said, he came up and said something. He goes, he kind of giggled and said, marriage is for those who understand it. And then just dropped the mic.
Mic drop.
You understand? And it was so, I remember it like it was yesterday, right? He said the least, but it was the most impactful. And as time went on, I understand more and more what he meant. So I think this whole marriage thing, people have to really understand it before they sign up to it, and that's, I got to say.
I think thank you, Lee. That was insightful. That was kind of giving people food for thought. That last mic drop that your stepfather left, that his marriage is for something, and what Milo was saying about the importance of it in our community, how you alluded to it in terms of how women and men are interacting now, how they're viewing each other in terms of people, and the importance of that union. Because I've been fortunate to have conversations with Lee in another arena where we're looking at young people and serious youth violence. And from my role that I've done, when I've explored the background of some of these young people that have been victims or perpetrators, one of the things that is kind of gut-wrenching and heartbreaking for me is that they're from broken homes. They're not from homes where there is that base of marriage and where that gives them that environment where there's nurturing, where there's love, where they're shown empathy, where they're allowed to develop empathy, where they're allowed to express themselves. So for me, there is that myth that in the Black community, marriage is not a strong unit, and it is a myth. I think there's more celebration of the independent single Black woman. There's more celebration of the Black man who's going out raving. But that celebration of the union of marriage, strong thing that is in our community. And I think if we was to focus more on the strengths that it brings, and yes, it's about love, but it's also about, as Lee said, when you have two and working together, you building foundation. So Lee, when you spoke about how it set a foundation for your children and how it's giving them that stability, it's giving them a different outlook on life. So we've all gone through it. I'm a married man. Please, when I say to you, this thing is not a bed of roses. It's not easy. And we can't look at marriage as it must fit into a certain type of, what Lee said is about people have to come to some consensus. They have to come to some agreement. How do we want our marriage to work? How do we want our relationship to progress? So that was nice and commendable, Lee, for just sharing some of your personal kind of journey. But I wanted to hear from like the pastor now, because we've got someone that's in the faith, understand, and I want to kind of get their kind of view on what does marriage mean? How can we almost make this institution of marriage something that is cool again, that is not, boy, my man's moist because he's got married, and how can we change the mindset of what Milo was saying, of man thinking, I'm not getting married. It shouldn't be something that, you're brave to get married. It should be actually, this is the foundation of our community. If we don't have that strong foundation of marriage, then we don't have that strong community. And if we don't have that strong community, all the madness that we're seeing going on now is part of the ramifications of that. So I want you to hear from the pastor, like, all right, give me some biblical kind of context to this. Let me inspire me. This is why you need to do this thing.
Let me get my notepad. And Scott, can I just quickly say something, right? Just touch on that last point where you say about how do we change the narrative. So just for example, you go into the barber shop, right? And you hear a lot of conversations happening. And, when they're talking about, when the single men are talking about women and meeting women, there's all the excitement. Mm-hmm. But when you don't get the same excitement for marriage. Yeah. If anything, it's hard work, and, there's that kind of almost like, I feel your pain, that I know you're going through, rather than it being that kind of celebration, as you said, right, of marriage. So I don't think there's enough examples, right, of that. Yeah, it works and it's great and it's the best thing I've ever done. And I'm now saying to you, man, come over here. It's much better on this side. We need to have more of those stories, and I don't think there's enough of them. So I just wanted to add.
Can I just?
Lee, sorry, I'm going to jump in.
Oh, sorry,
Lee. I was going to say yesterday we was really fortunate to have Ewan, who is the kung fu teacher. I shouldn't say kung fu. He's the martial arts teacher, and he was explaining that. When you see this man, I've met him once, I think, and the man, I nearly dropped down yesterday when the man say he's 60 odd, because the man look good, must be all the kung fu chop them thing and what he's doing. But the man looked good. But when he was talking about his marriage and the strength that he gets from his wife, and he said his wife is a strong woman, but she gives him that respect. So he's running the business. But what I loved about what he spoke about yesterday, before I bring in the pastor, was about the companionship. And thinking about what we're in now, Lee, and Milo and Pop, in terms of COVID, and lots of people are now lonely, that companionship. And when we're thinking about mental well-being, spiritual well-being, financial well-being, that union of marriage, what we're going through now, imagine you got your companion, the both of you. So if there's a loaf of bread, you're not cutting the bread and like, half has to go over to that house, half has to go to that house, piece have to go to that house, is staying. Your companion or your wife, if you're in business, they're not going to give you bad advice, because if they mash up the business, they're not just mashing up, they're mashing up the marriage. So, it was really beautiful hearing Ewan talk yesterday. I wish that he was able to come into the show, because how he spoke about marriage was so eloquent. But Pastor, I really want to dance with you a little bit, just to kind of, get that biblical kind of sense a little bit. So, let me dance when you start telling me about marriage, please.
Okay.
Sure is yours, man.
Well, I didn't come to preach,
Bring it home.
Marriage is for those who
brought a special offering. A special offering.
All right, then I'll preach. Thank you, Lee. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you, Marlon, for being there. Let me just say from the outset, I've been married for 32 years, and I've got 4 children, 27, 25, 20, and the last one is 16. But and I will share. I'll answer your question, but let me just share my story. It's like I grew up in a home with a mum and dad, but very matriarchal mother, like strong black woman, which I'm sure most black homes, like strong, had a strong black mother. And I would say, without being in any way disrespectful, my father was there, but he just didn't play that role as a father. He drank and he gambled. And so my mum struggled in the early years. And so then my mum just couldn't take it anymore and took us, me and my two sisters, to Jamaica. And I think she planned to just not come back, but then she came back and left us there. So then I grew up with a strong black grandmother. My grandfather had passed away, so now my grandmother, who had 11 children, my mum was the oldest, was raising 10 other children. So I grew up with my aunts, which was like 8 aunts. So there was no man around me in my grandmother's house. Strong black grandmother and 8 strong black aunts, you know. And then finally, when my mum worked and sorted and bought a house and that, she sent back for us, and I came back home with my mum. And I think I don't have a reference of what a husband and a father should be like. I didn't grow up with a reference and seeing it demonstrated before my eyes and growing up to see that. So when I do see it, it always just, like when I see a father playing with his son, I just always love it. You know, one time I was in Louisiana and I saw this father and this son, and he was romping and playing, and I'm like, I started crying because it just took me back, and I thought, I wish I had that. And so I determined that's what I was going to give to my children, you know. And I remember one time going to pick up my son from school. So I rode my bike and carried his bike. And this little boy passed me by and he saw me carrying this bike and riding my bike. And the little boy said to his mum, and I'll never forget this, I preached a sermon on it and I named it this. He said, I wish my dad would do that. You know, and I think every little boy kind of's got this, like, I wish my dad would have done that. So when I came into the church, as Marlo said, like Marlo, I stayed in the Queen's Majesty's Hotel as well for a couple of years.
Never believe it.
And got saved at 18, 19. And when I got saved, I thought I was not going. Marriage was not in my periphery or plan or etc. I thought I was just going to travel the world and speak. And then I met my wife at a conference. That same year I got saved. So I got saved in the March. The September I met her, and then we just became very good phone friends. And then we married. That was 1987. We married 1989. And at the beginning of my marriage, when I just got married and we moved in together, I remember my first struggle was my wife asking me, where am I going? And when she asked me the first time, where are you going? I said, why? And it reminded me of jail. I remember I used to say to her, I'm not in jail. I'm not a little boy, I got to tell you. And it was a struggle for me. And I remember when she asked, where am I going? It just used to mad me, and I used to get in my car and drive to the Docklands, which wasn't there at the time. It was just the docks and the old. And I used to pull up by there and just bang the steering wheel. Why do you want to know where I'm going, and all that? And it took me a little while for me to understand that I'm not single anymore. It took me a little while to understand that we're now 2, and the 2's become 1. And it took me a while to understand responsibility and security is what I learned. My wife needed security, you know? And it took me a while, but I got it and I understood it. And so, for me to be accountable for myself and even to this day, 32 years later, even from going up to the shop, I have to say, I'm going to the shop. Do you know what I mean? But I get it. I get it. And so, like you guys was describing, me and my wife are very different. I'm very outgoing. Very ambivert, people person. She's very quiet to herself. We're completely opposites, but I figured out that I wouldn't want to be married to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? it would be too much for me to come home to me. It's like, I come home to a very quiet, very secure, who loves home, loves being at home, and it works very, 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 very well, like how we are able to operate together. And I think the way you was describing your husband, that's what carries. My mum, I feel like I've got a lot of confidence. I feel like it's been shook recently, recently by people around, but my mum gave me confidence. I think if I said to my mum, I want to run for the Prime Minister of the country, my mum will say, you can do it,
Yeah.
And so for me, growing up on the streets, I was always confident. Like, so I always had money because I would do things quick and never think and second guess. And so I've been that way. And so my wife, she does that. Like, if there's anything that I feel I'm going to do or initiate, she just believes in me. She trusts in me, and, there's that verse in Proverbs 31 that says his wife trusts him, and I think it's a big thing, like when your wife trusts you as a man, and then you do all the things that causes her to trust you. And so, yeah, my mum and dad stayed together they both passed in 2013 and 2014, but they stayed together for maybe 58 years. In that 58 years, I'm 54 now, and in all that time, I never saw them hold hands. I never saw them kiss. I never see no affection whatsoever. And I remember when I must have been about 42, I said to my dad, Dad, like, all I want for my birthday is 3 things. 1, I need you to say, I love you, son. I'm proud of you. And I want you to kiss mum. And my dad, like, said, let me help you something. I said, I know you do, but I want to hear it. I've never heard it.
We know you like the kissing.
Yeah. And up to this day, did he do it? No. And the interesting thing, when I got saved, my pastor became like a father to me, like Harry McFarlane. He became my father, spiritual father figure, like helped me through college, learning, growing. As I left my dad's house, got to the car, he phoned me and we had a conversation. He said, happy birthday. And the last 2 things he said, and this was at me, and he said, I love you, son, and I'm proud of you. Wow. It's like he heard that conversation that I had with my father. So I said all that to say that with my kids, I constantly tell them how much I love them. Mm-hmm. I kiss them. And I remember, I don't know if this has ever happened to you with your kids. Like, I'm kissing my kids all the time when they're going into school. And then there came a time when I would drop them to school and I'll go to kiss them and they didn't want to kiss me. Yeah. I don't know if you heard. It's like, what? Like, it's like they became, like they went through this phase. But weird enough, as they've got older now, particularly my daughters, they want to sit on your lap now. They want to kiss you, And so I think I've created a culture in my family that wasn't there before. Like, there wasn't high marriages in my family. I think I'm one of the longest marrying in my family, but there wasn't high marriage. So I've created a culture of marriages, it's a legacy, a culture of affection, a culture where we hear I love yous, where we hear words of affirmation, just a turnaround kind of culture, and obviously a biblical culture. So what me and my wife over the years have been doing, in answer to your question, Scotty, is we do a lot of marriage. We've got a thing called Married for Life, and we do a lot of marriage conferences and I marry probably a year, probably do 10 to 15 marriages a year. We currently are running like premarital courses now, and we teach on things, communication, finance. We did a session last week, it was brilliant, on sex, went in, covered all the subjects that the church traditionally scared to talk about, money and sex, and really go into it. We bring in couples who share their real stories, share their failures and successes, etc.
Is it just for married couples or people that want to get married?
This is for people who are going to get married, this particular course. We've got people on this course at the moment, got 2 more sessions to go over them. And yeah, so we did it last year. We had 18 couples last session, which was 2019. Sorry, last year, 2020, the beginning, and then this year it's a new cohort. So we're feeding into, because when I got married, I never got no marriage preparation whatsoever. There was nothing. There was no sit down, no classes, no advice. I mean, the most I can remember is someone asking me, "What's your star sign?" and "What's their star sign?" It's like, but yeah. So we really believe that marriage is a huge, it's a huge thing. It's a lifetime thing, and I think it should be well prepared for and taught biblical principles, also just life skill principles, and then hear testimonies and stories of both. Let me just share this, and then we did one time where we had a panel of couples who were sharing their marriages and their stories, and they were talking about they have date nights and they do this and they do that. At the end of it, it was very helpful and it was lovely and all that. But I thought, this is like, it's not telling the full story of what it takes to stay married. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I said, all right, the next one we're going to do is why my marriage failed. So the second one I did was I brought in couples who had failed in their marriage and let them tell their story. In fact, the sister and her husband shared their story, how felt, and then how they came back. And for me, that story, those stories, I think was more helpful to the couples, than, we hold hands, we go out every Friday night, we eat around the table, which is not a picture of most marriages, So just hearing a balanced view of the successes, the failures, and then interjecting love. For me, love is not holding hands, kissing, I love you, starry eyes. Love is, for me, commitment. Love is hard work. Love is I'm there through the thick, the thin. Love is getting up and doing what you got to do. It's that. Yeah, that's the hard work of love.
Yeah, I think that Pastor Peter, you've got such a rich knowledge of this subject, and there's things that you mentioned about providing that kind of guidance before people get married. And yesterday when we was in conversation, we was talking as the therapist about actually couples getting counseling before they go down the aisle to actually understand a bit about themselves. Yeah. Because we got that old saying from the Caribbean, come see me, come live with me is 2 different things. So if you kind of have that space where you're exploring aspects of your personality, of your prospective partner's personality, how do those gel together, and how do you complement one another? And what you were saying, yes, this thing around love. So she talked about this kind of almost romantic kind of love. But the way how you spoke about love, Pastor, is love is a different thing. It's a nurture, it's a caring, it's an understanding, it's a compassion, it's an empathy, it's a calmness, it's a almost commitment to work, to understand each other. And I think once you believe in each other and believe in the union, it can be a beautiful thing. And people go through separations where they think they might be separating, but there might be something that sparks. Actually, I think I'm committed to this, to actually put away some of my ego. Lee, you spoke about trauma, and throughout this process that we've been talking about mental well-being, and this week is mental well-being week. And we have to understand that sometimes people's own trauma, their own history has an impact in how they interact with the opposite sex. And I think that kind of self-reflection that you have to do to know each other. And one of the previous shows, I think we had Raymond from Fifth Avenue, and Raymond was talking, in certain cultures, they say a man doesn't become a man until he's 40, because until that time, he's like a little boy. You don't really know yourself. You haven't developed. And I think this whole subject that we've covered over the last couple of weeks around financial wealth and mental well-being and spiritual well-being, how marriage is a part of that, how growing together is a part of that, how being true to yourself is almost part of that. I am good. My mental well-being is good. And what you said in the beginning, like when my wife was asking me, where you're going, and you go out in your car and you're thinking, hold on a second, why is this woman asking me my business about where I'm going? But almost coming to that realization, it's not far she want to fast up in my business. It's because she actually loves me and she cares about me. But you had to get your head around that and realize it's not about control. It's about mutual respect. It's about understanding. It's about me valuing the strengths that my wife brings for me, about how she holds me down, how we're going to grow together. So for me, it's been really interesting sitting in on the last 6 weeks and seeing how things have kind of almost blended together. And the last subject that we covered around marriage, the importance of it for our community, for us as individuals, for us in society. And I think that is a fundamental part of keeping our mental well-being and our spiritual well-being and our financial well-being in check with everybody else. So for me, I just want to say to Milo that I ain't got a hat on that moment, but if I had a hat on, I'd tip my hat and say, you've done really well in bringing such esteemed guests together over the last 6 weeks. People that have so much richness in knowledge. To the guys sitting in the studio now, and when I say guys, please don't take it as any form of respect. I just say guys. It's just a way of me kind of talking in terms of sharing your story and giving us a kind of understanding. And you know, I'm gonna leave here today, and I'm gonna have some hope. I'm gonna have some inspiration. I'm gonna have some food for thought around the last 6 weeks. So Milo, I just wanted to say thank you. The guys in the studio, thank you for listening to my madness. But it's Milo's show. It's Milo's thing. I'm gonna give Milo.
No, it's not Milo. First of all, my name is Marlo. I'm a big boot them. It's Marlo. Yeah. And the reason why I felt that this process was very, very important, because I have struggled through life with all kinds of issues. The greatest issue, looking back, begins with family and it ends with family. The issue started in the family and it will end with the family. And the reason, looking at my mom recently, as I said, I keep referring back to my mom now, my dad. They are sickly now. They're in age. Of age now. The marriage is serving them in their old age, where they can't serve themselves. They can't look after themselves. They are what they do. The fruit of the marriage, which is the children and the grandchildren, is what's serving them. Yeah, it's looking after their health and well-being and their legacy, everything that they've worked for. I said to my mom when she was on her deathbed, I said to her, because she loved the house being cleanly. Yeah, the house has to be clean. Yeah. I said, Mommy, I got the house clean for you. The house is the least of my problem. Yeah, because it gets to a place in your life where material things don't matter. Yeah, money can buy a bed, but it can't buy sleep. Yeah, you know, it can buy it can buy all kinds of things, but it can't buy family and home and love and all the things that really matter. And it's not until you come of age or things happen in your life that you realize where the true value is, where the true meaning of life is. It was for me, the family is where you were supposed to learn everything that you need to learn to go and deal with life. Yeah. But if you miss those lessons, or you didn't complete some of those lessons we're supposed to learn, you go in life unprepared, yeah, and ill-equipped for the life's challenges, yeah. And then what happens is mental health, you become vulnerable to becoming ill spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and even physically, because you didn't learn them lessons, yeah. And then what happens is ultimately legacy is affected. Your legacy is affected. Your children are affected, and then it passes down from generation to generation. Yeah, those struggles, those pains, those tribulations, those trials. I have to reset my life, and a lot of men have to reset their lives. And I think it starts with us as men, because we hold the gateway to marriage. Yeah, which is the nucleus, the heartbeat of a family. A strong family equals a strong community. A strong community equals a strong society. And a strong society equals a strong nation. You know what I'm saying to you? We can't go about building kingdoms and nations if we don't start back with the foundation, which is the family, and ultimately the union between the man and the woman. So when we're out here trying to do things on our own, trying to get money on our own, trying to find our purpose, trying to find our path on our own, trying to be around the right people, which become the wrong people, trying to be prosperous and productive, which we're producing the wrong things, the wrong fruit, it's because our foundation is ain't right. So let me own it. I have to go back to the beginning, and this process has helped me to kind of reset. And like Scotty said, I've recently, the last 3 months, I've started to get counseling, which has helped me to put some of my past in a certain place, which I can look at and start to unravel, unpack, and start to assemble the way it needs to be assembled. Yeah. And I would be an advocate for everybody that has listened in through the whole 6 series to try and see if you can get someone you can talk to and reason with, someone that can listen, someone that you can begin to start talking and laying down the baggage of the past. You understand? Because you can't go into your future with burdens of the past. You know. So
I'm doing counselling right now myself.
Yeah. Well, listen, anybody that's giving out the way you give out, Pastor, which you've been giving out for years since I met you in '94, yeah, you need to be able to get replenished. And I'm saying you can't give what you ain't got. You know, my sister, Karen Allen, powerful woman, minister, author, producer, director, motivational speaker, mother, counselor. There's so much accolades. She's written a book called Thou Art Man. Yeah, and I want to, first of all, I've given all of our guests a copy, and I bought 50 copies of the book, and I want to be able to give some to some of our guests. Inbox or contact medianet.com. Is it .live?
Info at
medianetlive.com.
Right. If you contact us or inbox me for your copy, I'm going to give the first 20 people a free copy of this book. Please read it. I think it's a powerful book that will empower the next generation to build families. And so we can ultimately leave a powerful legacy. So I just want to wrap up, and I just want to say thank you so much, Pastor P. Yeah, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Paulette, for being part of this process and bringing the second series to a wonderful end. And hopefully, by God's grace, we might have a third season and a fourth season. You never know. You never know. But I want to thank our sponsors, Legacy Foundation, Legacy Gala, Pen Pansy, Eat of Eden, and the Lottery Fund, and also MediaNet for enabling us to bring this show to manifestation. So God bless you. Thank you for listening, and hopefully see you soon in the future. Take care of your mental health. Yeah, health is self-care, healthcare, and wealth care. That's the future. God bless.